welcome to our video short dealing with college list development. You know me, I'm Eddie, and as you know also, we do a lot of work on the college list development, and it's a lengthy process. We discuss the colleges in every meeting we have, we amplify and we cut down the list. However, for the purposes of essay progress, we'd like to have a few schools nailed down by about June 15th. These don't have to be early decision schools, the schools that you're committing yourself to, or early action schools. They just need to be schools that we're 100% on applying to. And again, we really do this to say out in front of the essays. But after these few schools, how will we address building the college list? And in particular, how balanced a list should you be having, especially in terms of selectivity? Well, this is obviously a very personal question, so let me start off by getting us all on the same page. To begin, I start ranking the schools in terms of their selectivity around the middle of June, and that entails labeling them as reach, target, safety, or some combination thereof. The selectivity levels largely relate to the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Selectivity is a major determinant of the U.S. News rank, and it's a feedback loop. The more selective a school is, the higher the rank goes, which in turn generates more applications, which enhances the selectivity. It's not quite that simple, but it's close to it, and you get the idea. So there's a good correlation between U.S. News as well as the selectivity. So let's start off by discussing reaches, the schools that everybody wants to go to. And as life works out, these are also the schools where it's statistically very unlikely that you, the royal you, everybody, will be admitted. Everywhere in the top 25 in the country is by default a reach for just about every student. Just to give you an idea, NYU is the number 20, or it's one of the number 25 schools in the country right now, and last year the College of Arts and Sciences admitted at 4%. So, 96% of students getting denied, the odds typically are not going to be in your favor, in anyone's favor in the top 25. That doesn't mean that you won't get in. After all, we have a number of students that are admitted to, top 5, top 10, much less top 25. But it's hard to overstate how competitive the top 25 are getting. So that has to be something that you're just aware of. Top 25 schools are hard, and like I said, their reach is statistically unlikely for just about everyone. But let's look a level below that. These are the target schools or the match schools. Admission to these schools generally can go either way, but they have a reasonably good chance of admission. For a lot of schools, though, this has to do with the major. For instance, Purdue, for a lot of students, is going to be a target or a safety, and the same with Illinois. But you put computer science or data science into the mix, and it suddenly becomes a reach for just about everybody. I mean, Illinois is admitting it at 4% for computer science. So getting in it could be a safety for some students and reaches for other students whose only difference is the major and the field of study that they want to go into. So targets can really range. Safeties are the schools that are the ones that you should definitely be getting into, unless there's an act of God, unless you get suspended, unless you start failing a class. They should work out. These days, most students cannot find a true safety within the top 75 colleges in the country, and that's especially the case, yet again, for computer science and engineering majors. And a little bit more bad news, for CS and engineering majors, no UCs are safe aside from maybe Merced. Last year we had a student from the Fremont area that was admitted to the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign computer engineering, top 10 overall engineering program. So good enough for that, but waitlisted or denied to every UC through Riverside. So UC tough, CS tough, safety's tougher for engineering. So after all of this, then the question becomes, how do we balance the list? How many reaches, targets, matches, and safeties should we have? Again, this is something that we go into with some detail when we meet. We cut things down, we organize things, we reorganize the list and how we're going to apply to it. But again, a very personal process, and that really depends on the selectivity of the list, depends on two big things. Number one, your risk tolerance, and number two, how happy you are with your safeties. If you gladly go to maybe 2 to 3 on the safeties on your list, and you're comfortable with handling a great deal of rejection, then you can consider going all in on the majority of the schools in your list, because you're happy with your safeties, which, as we've said, should, unless there's an act of God, admit you. Conversely, if you're a risk-averse person, or you don't feel really good or comfortable with any of your safeties, you don't really want to go to them and you want more options, then we'd need a school list that would give us a more even distribution. We'd have an equal number probably of reaches and safeties, and a lot of targets, especially those that skewed towards the safety range for the remaining schools. But we don't need to really sort any of this out for a while. Most students' counseling offices will have a deadline for early schools of around November 1, and that's more or less our deadline for making sure we know what early schools you're going to be doing. Schools by November 1 application deadlines, and most high schools will have around a late September deadline for all the 1/1, January 1 deadlines. We would like to know, as I said, the early schools, the November 1 schools, by around early September at the very latest. With those schools, there are a few different application plans under which you can apply. The most notable of these is early decision, where you commit yourself. You're basically saying, if you let me in, I'll go. You're going to give me an additional statistical advantage, and in return, I commit myself to going to your school if you let me in. That's early decision. You can apply to one of those, because if you get in, you have to go. Early action is rather different. Early action is an early school that does not necessarily give you much of an advantage, and it doesn't bind you either. So although students can do one school early decision, they can do essentially infinite schools for early action. Early action plans are offered at a lot of public universities that happen to have strong engineering and computer science programs, as well as strong business programs. Schools like Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin all have early action programs where students that are applying from out of state should apply by. If you're applying from out of state to a competitive major, i.e. business or engineering or CS at a public out-of-state school, you will encounter a big disadvantage if you apply by the regular decision deadline. In order to avoid that disadvantage, in order to avoid competing with in-state kids for limited slots by the regular decision deadline, we need to make sure that we get public out-of-state schools in engineering, CS, business students in by November 1. We'll have students that'll apply to 8 or 9 schools by November 1 because they'll be applying to one early decision school and 7 or 8 early action schools. So we have some work to do in terms of paring the list down, but we have some time to do it. We need to make some decisions a little early in the process to ensure that all the essays are rolling well. And this also gives us a nice start to discussing the colleges and really makes things real, and we can discuss things in more detail after we get past this point. But it's a long road. It's a good idea to get started early. As always, I love talking about the college list and college selection, and as always, I'm open to questions. So let me know any questions as you have them, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon.